How would you approach a debate with Richard Dawkins?
The way I do the other debates that I've been involved in, they are always academic forums that are conducted with civility and respect. They're not like political debates or debates like you might see in the House of Commons. These are academic forums where one concentrates on the arguments and counter-arguments, the truth of the premises of those arguments and objections to them, and not on personalities or ad hominem attacks. On my part, I don't engage in that sort of thing.
The spate of new books published by the new atheists like Harris and Hitchens and Dawkins and so forth are not sophisticated books intellectually. These are, for the most part, angry, bitter diatribes against religion.
These are academic forums where one concentrates on the arguments.
And while someone like Dawkins may be a good scientist in his field,
and not on personalities or ad hominem attacks.
When he begins to talk about philosophy and theology, he is merely a layman. And The God Delusion is a very unsophisticated book.
And not on personalities or ad hominem attacks.
As a philosopher, I was just appalled at the arguments he gives in that book. It is an embarrassment, really, I think.
Well, I can agree, and I suspect.
And that was it. That was Craig's entire argument. Wow, Bill, Dawkins is just a mere layman outside of his field and produces embarrassing arguments. Oh, and Bill, your concern for the academic standing of Richard Dawkins was entirely genuine and not even the slightest bit self-serving or dripping with pretentious patronisation. But it's worse than that, you see, Bill, because there's this thing called the argument from authority fallacy, which no serious philosopher worth his bacon would make. It's basically erroneously assuming that if an authority figure says something, therefore it must be right. The irony being, of course, is that authority figures are usually right. This is why you go to a mechanic for car trouble and a doctor for medical help. But while the delegation of the decision to those better qualified might be a smart thing to do under some circumstances, nonetheless, it is not an academic argument to say they are an authority figure, therefore they are right.
Is there a human doctor around?
Young lady, I'm an expert on humans.
For that's a content-free argument. You've not even touched on assessing any aspect of the problem at hand. But you are presenting exactly the same fallacious argument here, Bill. You say that Dawkins is not an authority, so he must be wrong. You present no argument about what he says, none whatsoever.
I would like to come back to an earlier point, if I may, too, and that is the notion that atheists are somehow the intelligentsia among us and so forth. I think this is just completely false. The spate of new books published by the new atheists like Harris and Hitchens and Dawkins and so forth are not sophisticated books intellectually. These are, for the most part, angry, bitter diatribes against religion. And while someone like Dawkins may be a good scientist in his field, when he begins to talk about philosophy and theology, he is merely a layman. And The God Delusion is a very unsophisticated book intellectually. As a philosopher, I was just appalled at the arguments he gives in that book. It is an embarrassment, really, I think.
You, the professional philosopher.
As a professional philosopher,
with your many books and debates, I mean, ignoring the snide condescension, you are presenting a 100% content-free argument and wondering why Dawkins doesn't take you seriously. The irony being, of course, is that your fans seem to be labouring under the delusion that you are some mighty academic philosopher.
A man regarded by many as the world's leading defender of Christian belief.
Oh dear, it would appear, Bill, that your ineptitude in your erroneous application of the appeal to authority is infectious. But we can actually test this versus reality. You see, publication records give you a pretty good assessment of what people have achieved. Sure, it doesn't tell you if someone is right or not, but it does give you a good idea of the academic achievements over their career. That is, it gives you a good feeling of the size of their academic balls. Two metrics are basically how many papers someone has published and how interesting those papers were, which is typically reflected in the number of citations. Craig has actually published quite a lot, but it's all greeted by the academic community with great roars of apathetic boredom and disinterest. I mean, really, Craig's articles pull in on average about 2 citations per article.
It is an embarrassment, really, I think.
Well, I can agree, and I suspect Michael may as well.
Look, 2 citations, Craig. I'm far from the world's greatest scientist. But even I pull in well over 5 times, almost 10 times as many citations per article as you do. I mean, what exactly is it that makes your fans think that you're some successful leading world academic?
As a professional philosopher,
When the dirty little secret of your frankly third-rate track record tells an entirely different story. Sorry, Craig, but from the point of view of peer review literature, you're an unsuccessful academic midget. That's just a objective assessment of your publication record. Shit, Craig, I'm 20 years younger than you, and already I've pulled in about 5 times as many citations as you. That is, my publication record already eclipses.
A man regarded by many as the world's leading defender of Christian belief.
Come on, Craig, I dares you. Tell me that you're a world-class paradigm-shifting philosopher. It's just no one can appreciate how brilliant your work is. Because all that's going to say is that you're an incompetent communicator. I mean, are you really about to tell everyone with all those public speaking engagements that you still cannot write a paper to convey the concepts you want? Sorry, 2 citations, Craig, but it's reality check time. We both know that all of those trees that laid down their lives such that your name could appear in print died in vain. Oh, and one last thing, Craig. You'll be happy to know that merely Dawkins' top-cited paper has significantly more citations than your entire contribution to the academic literature. That is, in essence, more citations than your entire academic career. You see, this is the thing, Craig. If someone's actually making a bullshit argument,
when I claim that there was a worldwide flood, I get laughed at. I get laughed at. I get laughed at. But this planet is covered 3/4 in water. If the planet flooded like the Bible says, the Grand Canyon could have been formed in about 5 minutes.
and it really is that easy to demonstrate how bogus it is. Demonstrate it! Hell, that's what any modestly competent person would do under the circumstances.
This is a geographical map of the United States. This is the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is about 300 miles long. In order to travel from one end of the canyon to the other in 5 minutes, it is required that you would be travelling at about 5 to 6 times the speed of sound.
The Grand Canyon could have been formed in about 5 minutes. I get laughed at in about 5 minutes. I get laughed at.
How difficult can it be, Bill, to show how inept these arguments actually are? Hell, that's pretty much all I do with a Why Do People Laugh at Creationist series, which you are now, for reasons that should be obvious from this video. Part of the lulz matter.